No one can have failed to notice the appalling weather this summer. But while the arable farmers and problems with harvest have stolen the headlines, the implications for the livestock sector could be equally serious. Here at the Dairy Event and Livestock Show, planning for the winter is right at the top of the agenda, mainly because of the shortage of this stuff: straw. Whether it's in the ration or for bedding, cereal straw is central to dairy and beef farmers' plans for the winter. And with some reports suggesting straw availability is 50% down on normal, it's becoming a serious issue.
This is one of the worst years we've had for quite some time. I can't remember in the last 10, 12 years having any trouble getting straw. Some years it's more expensive than others, but quota supply has not been a problem, an issue in the past.
But this year will be.
This year it is, yes.
I think the quantity of straw will probably be okay for the winter. The quality will be really poor, but we'll have enough volume.
And if it is poor quality, then what are farmers going to have to do? Because presumably...
Well, if they're using straw as feed, they'll have to buy more concentrates in to supplement it. If they're using it as bedding, then they're going to have some dusty yards, unfortunately, but that's how the season has turned out this year.
And have you got enough on your farm?
No, we're short.
Oh, it's probably the worst year we've ever had for straw, I think. Yeah. I mean, it's given me a shake. I think what we'll do is we'll look at other systems. I think we'll look at outwintering more and so on and so forth, perhaps even growing kale or stubble turnips or something like that, just to push the summer out and squeeze the winter down to as little as we can get. You know.
Yeah. And is that
it's a huge cost. You know.
Is that a longer term plan, or is it?
Yeah, it's a long term plan. I mean, obviously you can't do that this year, but next year and future years, I think that's what we've got to look at doing.
It's clear that farmers have got a problem with shortage of straw, but how serious a problem is it really?
Oh, the shortage of straw situation this year is very serious now. The weather conditions have been appalling. The problem for the farmers with that is that they have to get the next crop of grain in, and that is a priority to them rather than gathering the straw and selling it off the field, because that slows down the process of getting the next crop in. So it's more likely those farmers are going to decide to chop the straw and get the land turned back over and reseeded. So that leaves the bedding market very short of material. The alternatives, if you're not using straw for bedding, is all the wood byproducts that you can get: sawdust, shavings, wood chip, and then you move on to paper materials. There is one called EnviroBed, which is dried paper mill fibre, and then there's wetter materials, also out of the paper industry, and sand. Sand is a choice for farmers who have a deep bed cubicle situation. It is difficult to handle in slurry lagoons, but that's about the choice of bedding now, if you take out straw as a possibility. I believe we are going to see a shortage of bedding materials going on into subsequent years. The building industry is slowing down now, therefore less wood is being used in the building industry, which means there's less bedding materials. In addition to that, the outlet of using wood byproducts for incineration to make power is also a big outlet, and a lot of the wood is actually going into that stream now, which takes it away from the farming industry.
Keith Cutler is a vet in the southwest of England and also Farmers Weekly's Livestock Advisor of the Year. Keith, we know that it's been incredibly wet there out in the fields. What are the key issues for farmers with it being wet underfoot or having wet grass? What do they need to look out for?
There's several problems. Nutrition's a problem. There's lots of grass available, but quality is poor, so we're having to use buffer feeding. We're seeing probably a little bit more lameness than usual, with the feet being constantly wet. And we're certainly seeing more mastitis than usual, particularly strep uberis mastitis is causing a problem. And in young stock, again, we're getting higher levels of parasites, worms. Lungworm in particular is coming through earlier than usual, and we're seeing increased incidence of liver fluke.
And one of the things we've been hearing at the dairy event today is the problems of the shortage of straw. If farmers have got a shortage of straw, or indeed they've got straw which is pretty poor quality that they're going to have to use this winter, what are the problems that presents, and what should they be doing about it?
Perhaps they need to be looking at alternatives for bedding their cubicles, if that's a possibility, looking at perhaps wood chips or dry paper waste, or some other alternative if it's viable to them.
And does bad quality straw actually present sort of health and welfare issues for the livestock?
Yes, it does, and the cubicle management or straw yard management is much worse, but also foursy straw, moulds, that's just not good for the cows in general, and some of the fungi can even cause cows to abort, so we need to watch out for things like that.
Straw is a central component of the feed ration, but now dairy and beef farmers may be forced into finding alternatives. So what are the options?
One of the major benefits of straw in the diet is that it actually slows down the rate of passage of feed and therefore actually generally dries up the dung. So inadvertently, although you could be saving on feeding straw, bedding requirement could rise quite dramatically by leaving it out. And equally with dry dairy cows, for example, where straw can be a very, very effective forage base in terms of reducing energy density and correcting mineral imbalances. A dry dairy cow, for example, would use approximately 1/4 of a tonne of straw. So even with a £20 a tonne increase in straw cost, it equates to £5 a cow. Removing that from the diet could lead to the requirement for a more expensive mineral, a decab mineral possibly to balance the grass silage, which could easily cost £10 to £15 a cow. So it's important to look at it in its entirety and look at the overall diet and the likely knock-on effects.
While straw in the ration is one issue for farmers, David Barker at Optivite says that farmers also need to consider the feed values of wheat and other crops.
Well, not only is straw an issue, but there certainly could be issues with wheat and its feed value, particularly if it's fed above 15% moisture content. If it's fed, say, at 20%, you could easily lose a megajoule, and therefore you should allow for that when you're actually doing your rations for feeding this winter. Sprouting can be a problem. Certainly if you had a sample that had at least 10% sprouting, you've lost at least 1% of the energy. But not only the energy, you can lose protein content, mineral content and vitamin content.
The next few weeks for livestock farmers are going to be crucial. Will they be able to get hold of enough straw, and at what quality? Only time will tell, but one thing's for sure, they're going to have to plan for a winter of new challenges for bedding and feed.